Hey everybody, I'm Asian Funk. Welcome back to my channel. In this video, I'm joined by a super special guest. He is one of the most prolific and illustrious comic book artists of the modern era, Mr. Alex Sinclair. Thank you so much for being here.
Hey, thanks so much. Appreciate the very nice introduction.
Oh yeah, of course, of course. Have you done a lot of these virtual interviews?
Yeah, actually, the last couple months, I've definitely done quite a few of them.
Was it? Do you feel more comfortable now talking in front of a computer screen?
Yeah, I guess I think it's easier to do this than in front of a crowd of 100 people, 200 people, which I've done before, and so it's easier to just the one-on-one thing is great. And these pre-recorded ones are even better because you can just delete that.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, because I live on a busy street, and every once in a while you hear like drag racing. Yeah. So you mentioned that, you find these more relaxing, more comfortable than like being in a crowd. I know I've seen a lot of videos where you're giving a demonstration while you're answering questions. Um, do you do you find those challenging when you're trying to like answer a moderator, but also like show how you're coloring?
Not really. It's just I guess I got used to, I work with the TV on or I work with the music on, so I'm used to absorbing the ambient noise or whatever it is that's going on as I work. So it just kind of becomes part of that. Uh, I tend to prefer doing those demonstrations with like an MC because when I start to focus on certain things, I go silent, and it helps to have someone there to like push me back into like, hey, wait a minute, you're in front of a few people. We got to keep talking here.
Mm. Yeah, I guess that makes sense. When you're working, do you usually have music playing to get into the groove, into a zone, or do you like it completely silent?
No, there has to be something going on. When it's silent, I get up, I leave, I come back. It's too distracting when there's no noise.
Mm.
It goes back to when I was in college. I would study with rock music on, and it would help me focus.
Huh.
So same with this. Most of the stuff that I do put on is episodic TV. So a series of TV shows that I've watched in the past. So it's something that kind of engages me, but I can disconnect enough from it that I can focus on my work.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it helps kind of have that background noise going.
That's why people like to go to coffee shops,
Yeah.
because there's a constant humming, constant sound, just like a repetitive, the doors opening. So yeah, that makes total sense. What was the last convention you attended in person? Now that it's been a few months of just being
That's
indoors.
a great question. I'm trying to remember what that was. Toronto last November. So it's
Oh,
coming
so
up on about a year. Yeah. So I hadn't done any in 2020
yeah,
when this my first convention was going to be Emerald City in Seattle
right.
with Repop, and right the week before is when everything kind of started falling apart,
Yep.
and Scott Williams and I were going to be guests together, and we kind of both said, why don't maybe we should skip this one,
Yeah.
and the folks at Repop were very understanding, very cool about it. I mean, they ended up moving the show and then eventually canceling it, so they kind
Yeah.
of saw the writing on the wall. And so yeah, back then we didn't know as much as we do now, whatever little that is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it was like, yeah, let's just play it safe.
You mentioned that when you are working on a run of covers, that you try to use um, different colors on them so that you don't,
Mhm.
so that when a reader is going to a comic book shop, it doesn't all look like the same covers when they're next to each other.
Yeah,
Um, can you can you talk about like other things like that that you consider when you're doing your color work for a run?
yeah. I mean, I do my best to try and keep them differently. So even if I'm doing, say, a Jim Scott and my cover, that's for Batman, and then we're doing another cover with Jim and Scott and I for Wonder Woman. I try and keep even those palettes different, just so that it's not like, oh, hey, those books linked. Especially since we're doing a lot of variant cover work right now, I try and vary that. It kind of helps the 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 creativity. It challenges it a little bit more for me. I'm definitely very conscious of interior work that way. I'm very, very mindful of what palettes I pick to help the storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Mostly because one, I want to make sure that the story comes through properly. But two, trying to create visual cues for the reader too, so that even without reading, the readers automatically kind of cued into the fact that we just switched either time, locations, or flashback kind of situation. So I'm very, very, very mindful of that work, the storytelling part of it. So when I read the script, as I read the script, I'm looking at the artwork. I'm trying to create the palettes in my head already, and then I basically color that way. So I'll color every scene continuous within a comic, even though it's maybe separated page number wise. So if the same scene happens in pages 1 through 4, and then page 7, and then page 14 and 17, I'll color those together so that there's a consistency to the palettes and the lighting of that scene, and then I'll color that next scene next, and however many scenes are within each issue. I keep track of the palettes that I'm using and color them throughout that way. It helps me color faster too, because then I don't have to try and remember what did I do on page 12. If that was 10 pages ago, it's like, oh yeah, I think I did this. It's easier to just, like I said, keep that consistency, and then the reader immediately realizes, oh, this goes with what I read 10 pages ago, and there's an immediate connection for the story.
Yeah, can you? That's very interesting. Can you talk a little bit more about just the process of how comic books, get made? Like usually it starts with the artist, and then goes into the inker, and then gets to you.
Right.
Can you talk about a little bit more about that process overall, and how, because you're kind of like the final stage, right before it's done and gets proofread or finalized or whatever. Can you talk about how important that step and the coloring is into actually bringing the comic book to life?
Sure. So I think that's probably my favorite part of comics, is that it's a collaborative medium, and so that the process starts really with the writer, who will write the script and then pass it off to the penciler, who will interpret the script into drawn form, and then the inker takes over that, and then they pass it off to me. And so it's cool that if the machine is working properly, the writer's already anticipating what the three of us are doing, and then the penciler's anticipating what the inks and the colors are going to be like, so that when it gets to each of us, there's already been kind of a look ahead to what each collaborator is going to bring to the table, so that when it's all said and done, it really was a work of all 4 or 5 of us, if you want to include the letterer, because he or she is also contributing to the comic book, as the letterer is the visual interpretation of the writer. And so there's a lot of that, what do you call it? It's not communication, but it's almost like an unspoken connection, right, that we all kind of have. And so there's times when you make connections with specific creators that stick, and that you're really happy with, and hopefully leads to more projects together in the future. And I've been lucky to have had quite a few of those, and I'm still benefiting from a lot of those.
Yeah. You mentioned having a certain connection with a group that you keep either working with or you keep getting paired up with. Obviously, there's Jim and Scott and you considered like a trinity almost, to use the DC reference.
Yeah.
I just thought of that just now. But yeah,
Sure.
So why do you think specifically the three of you work so well together?
Right before Hush, we did a Just Imagine Wonder Woman book by Stan Lee, and we did that as a warm up to Hush. And I think that particular collaboration was so it worked so well, and we worked so well together, that I think we almost kind of decided that if we did so well here, let's keep it going, and it happened to gel and solidify, and now it's this thing, right, where if Jim's drawing it, there's a 99.9% chance that Scott's going to ink it, and then I'm going to be coloring right after that, unless at some point the time doesn't allow for it. Then either Jim just goes ahead and inks it himself, or someone else inks it, and then either I color it, someone else does color it. And so it's, like I said, it's rare when we don't get to work as three, but I think we're all very happy when it plays out that all three of us can do a project or a cover or whatever it is that we're working on together.
Yeah, that's really cool. It's like, and you're right. I have noticed too when, when it's sometimes if it's just Jim and Scott, or when it's just, you and Jim, it's like, if one of the three is missing, it's not as easy to identify. But usually when it's the three of you, it's almost like, it's like Captain Planet, like all of you combined, it's like, oh, okay. Easy to identify.
I like that. Great.
When you hit like a colorist block, like I don't know if colorists have that, how like writers have a writer's block, have trouble trying to figure out a color scheme, or if you hit like a patch where you can't figure out the right palette, what do you do to well, first off, do you get that, and how do you usually get back into figuring that out?
I do get it. It does happen. Not very often, but it happens more on covers than say interiors. I think interiors it's a little bit easier because I'm just kind of flowing with the story. And like I said, like as I read the script in my head, it's already the palettes are already kind of forming. By the time I actually get to start the color, I've already in my head colored it, if that makes sense. In my head, I was like, okay, I'm doing it this way. There's a lot of more organic rendering and discoveries that are happening as I'm working, but for the most part, the palette is established as I hit a page. The covers, since we have to differ from one to the next, and I work with multiple artists on multiple covers, that there has been a few that when they show up, I'm a little stumped, or maybe I'm a little burnt from doing the sequential work, and I got to stop and just do one image. So I do different things. Sometimes I'll work on a different cover if that particular one isn't kind of speaking to me, or I will just walk away. Either like take a shower. I tend to find myself that when I take a shower, my blocks go away, or I'll go watch TV with my daughters and just watch something that I would normally not watch. They do a lot of shows. There's like home decorating shows.
Yep.
House flipping show. These shows that I don't watch, but I think I kind of go numb watching them. That my brain kind of resets, and a lot of inspiration comes out of that.
What was the fastest turnaround time you had on a cover?
On a cover, well, there's covers that should take a certain amount of time that I maybe took less than. I think I've been able to color a cover within an hour once. Wow. From black and white to finish, and it was because it had to be done within an hour. But those covers tend to have minimal backgrounds. Maybe it's a special effect or something like that. So there's been many like maybe speed records that I feel that I've broken, but it's not out of wanting to be fast. I think it's more of the necessity of the deadline that forced me to break that speed record. Because that's one of the things people ask me, what's the most amount of pages you've covered in a day, or how long does it take you to do a page? And my answer is always like, it depends on the deadline. Right. If 10 pages are due tomorrow, I have to do 10 pages in a day, and that's my benchmark.
Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't actually think of that, because one of my questions was like, oh, what's the most covers you've done in a period of time? But really, it's like, if I have 3 covers due tomorrow, then it's 3 covers. So yeah, that makes total sense. So I liked what you said in an interview. You said one of the most important lessons you ever learned about coloring was that it's easy to over render. It's easy to over color. Can you talk a little bit more about that, and just how you stop yourself from overcoloring or spending too many times creating version after version, and how when a cover is done, besides the deadline, but when you feel like this is the best you can do?
Yeah, well, since we color digitally, we have the it's like kind of like a blessing and a curse, right? Where we can zoom in really tight to make sure that everything is very neat and clean. So early on, as we were trying to figure out the process for coloring way back when, I think one of the problems we were facing is that we were zooming in super tight, and rendering every little face and and then, when the book printed, we realized, like, wow, that's 45 minutes. I could have just not done anything.
Yep. Yeah.
And so we learned to zoom out to see something, to make sure that, all right, if I over render here, it's going to get lost. So I tend to budget my time depending on the moments in each page, that I want to make sure that I capture the specific moment, the hot point, or the key frame or panel within a page, and then work around that. And so it's a lot of, like, your composition of a painting. When you're going to paint it, you got to make sure that your elements help the reader's eye kind of flow through it. And so that as you're coloring, your rendering can definitely help or hinder that. And so most of my rendering is focused on helping guide the eye through the panels and the pages, and knowing that if I over render these little heads over here in the background, the reader's eyes are going to go to that and then maybe just dead stop there. And so there's a lot of that, where the detail increases as the importance of the character or characters within each panel and page increases. So the less important you are in a panel, the less time I'm going to spend on you, kind of a thing.
Right, because when you're working on something, the reader's only going to see it sometimes, in inches, right? And there's no way they're going to blow it up to the level that you're able to zoom in like 2000 magnification, right, to see. But yeah, so that makes sense. So you said that Batman's one of your favorite characters, period, and also one of your favorite characters to color. But you also said he's one of the most difficult to color. Can you describe that as to why?
Right. So, I mean, kind of what I was talking about before is where you want the character to pop. You want the character to really stand out, especially if he or she is the main character in the story that you're working on. Well, with Batman, here's a character that should blend into the night, should blend into the background. So you're walking this fine line of hey, he's got to pop, but he's got to blend. He's got to pop, he's got to blend. He's got to be important, but not really. You can't see him. He's in the night. And so, you're stuck kind of playing both sides of the argument. And so that's what makes it difficult. He's one of my favorites because it's all about mood. Dropping the mood, dropping the suspense, the drama, those key moments with him in each panel, in each page, each cover are cool because you really have to think your way through it. And so I think as someone who works on sequential work every day, you look for those moments that are going to challenge you as an artist. Because like I said, if I'm coloring 12 pages of the exact same scene, as I'm getting to that 10th or 11th page, you're a little kind of burnt out on that scene, and you're like looking forward to that next set of pages that you're going to get. So you look for stuff to challenge yourself, and sometimes it becomes that, right? It's like, okay, how am I going to make this cool? How can I challenge myself creatively to make sure that I'm putting into this page as much as the artist, the writer, the pencil, and the inker did as well.
Yeah, I like what you said about how it's challenging to make Batman, who is supposed to blend in with the shadows, to also pop. And it always made me laugh that, like, for a character who's always supposed to be in the shadows, that he would have a sidekick who wore bright colors. So that always made me laugh.
Well, he carried his own little target, right?
That's right. Yeah. Maybe that was on purpose, right? Because you focus on Robin, and then Batman gets to. So now it makes sense.
And you thought he was protecting Robin.
Yeah. But somehow he's, it worked. He's still around. So you're a DC guy, most of your career, and but I see a Captain America behind you. So my question is there a Marvel character that you haven't worked on that you would like to work on, or a title?
Yeah, I think, like you said, I've been with DC most of my career. Growing up, I read both. I love both. I drew both. I painted both. But my career has been mostly DC. And so, I mean, I go back to my favorite characters from when I was reading them. I'd love to work on them. Daredevil is one of my favorite characters. I mean, I read Frank Miller's Daredevil growing up, and that to me immediately became that character. When you say Daredevil, that's what I see in my head. Captain America is definitely one of my favorites. The X-Men have been great. I mean, I was a fan of Jim's before I became an employee of Jim's, or a colleague of Jim's, and so X-Men are I love the X-Men. Colossus is my favorite X-Men. So
Really? Huh.
one of those, it's the chrome, man. It's the shiny stuff.
Oh, okay, okay. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. It's probably, I would think that it would be really fun to color because he's always reflecting his environment.
Yeah, and that's
I'm
the
probably,
challenge, right? It's
yeah,
really
yeah,
cool, but it's super hard to do chrome.
yeah, yeah. I think that's yeah, because he's like a walking mirror almost.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, what was that? Can you just kind of describe what it was like? You said that you were already a fan of Jim's from the X-Men. What was it like to find out, and like of Frank Miller? What was it like when you found out that you were being able to color their lines? Like that must have been like a dream come true.
Right. Yeah, it's like the little bucket list. Like, oh, like you have this like bucket list of artists you'd love to work with in your lifetime, and to check one of those off. Especially, I mean, the amount of work I've been able to do with Jim and now with Frank as well has been, like I said, I was a fan of their work long before I became a professional, and to now be able to work with them regularly is it's a dream come true. I pinch myself. I doesn't go escape me as I'm working on their stuff. It never gets past me that how grateful I should be, and I am because of that.
That's really awesome. What are your top 3 favorite DC characters that aren't Batman?
It's a great question. There's Hawkman's always he's been kind of really cool to work in the past.
Yeah.
The feathers, maybe it's the feathers. I love painting wildlife, so it kind of brings that to that for me.
Mm-hmm.
Hawkman's a cool one. I'm lucky that I got to work on the series for a couple issues on that with Brian Hitch. And I've become a huge fan of Superman with Brian Bendis on the book, and working with Ivan and Joe on it. I used to be the guy that said, no, Batman's cooler. Batman's way cooler than Superman. And Brian's kind of brought Superman back up to the list for me.
Yeah.
And then there's little characters here and there that I like doing. I mean, Booster Gold, because of reading the Matisse and Kevin Maguire series when they were on it.
That's right. Yeah.
It was always so much fun for that character and Blue Beetle. And I always throw out, when people ask, what should we do a book about? I always say Ambush Bug, because he's so obscure that no one ever thinks about.
That's hilarious.
And there was that miniseries that came out ages ago, which was hilarious, and it was by Giffen.
That's right.
And so Ambush Bug is like, yeah, let's do Ambush Bug.
That's so funny. I mean, I think if you keep saying it enough, someone will be like, hey, didn't Alex want to do this book? Let's just do it.
Dude, I don't know. They'll think I've lost it. They'll fire me.
That's pretty funny. I'll look forward to that. I'll be like checking every once in a while. I have a slideshow of some of your work, because up to this point, for those of who are going to be watching, I'm sure they've seen your work, but maybe they're not familiar with your work. Sure. Do you mind if I show you a slideshow? Is that okay?
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, let's look at it.
Cool.
Oh yeah, the accompanying covers.
Yeah. So this is, I think, probably one of. I mean, you have a lot, but this is one of my favorite, and probably one of the most iconic images you've worked on. Can you talk a little bit about this, and when you knew that that it was good, that you were happy with the coloring?
So the Batman piece was done first. Jim did it. It was a variant cover to 608. So when 608 sold out, I think it was like the second printing was going to be this piece that we created for a poster.
Okay.
That then they decided to use it as the variant cover, and so it got printed. It came out. We loved it. And then when we were starting to draw Superman, I think he wanted that first issue cover to be something iconic, and he's the one that came up with the idea of doing the mirror image of the Batman piece. And in so doing, it was one of the first things I colored of Superman, and I really, it's great because you see the really contrasting styles that I used, not only palette wise, but rendering style. Yep. Where with Hush, I hand watercolored the backgrounds of all the covers and the interiors for the first few issues of the book. and then I would scan the watercolors in and then do the digital coloring over that. And so you see how very organic the Batman side looks, and then how very clean and slick and pristine the Superman side looks.
Right.
And also the contrast of just the life is kind of drawn out of Gotham City, and that's all there is in Metropolis. It's all life, it's all golden, bright, and so it when you put them side by side, it's really cool in that it creates this really these contrasting images of not only the two characters, but the ideology that went into what we were going to do with the book. Because before we started each series, we spoke about what we were going to do different than what we had just done, because it didn't make sense to color Superman the way we had just done Hush, because of the contrasting, mythologies, the story styles, the art styles, and so it's cool because it really nothing represents that more than what we see here. And then this image I actually put together to create a print for a convention at some point, where I took both covers and I blended them in together.
Oh, really? Okay.
Stand by side, yeah. So these were never drawn like this; they were drawn separately.
Yeah. This is actually one of the few images I've seen of them put together like this, and I was like, oh wow. No one ever thinks to have them side by side, and that you mentioned all these differences. Like I didn't realize, like you said, Batman's side is colder, a little more flat, and then Superman is warmer and shinier. So I didn't really realize, when you look at them separately, you think you did the same rendering on both, but when you put them side by side, they're very different.
Yeah, and all I can think of is I would love to put a little bit of golden light on Batman's cape right there to tie it in a little bit better.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Of course. So there's more of a continuity. Yeah. But that's interesting. Yeah, I was going to ask if there was anything you would add, and that's interesting.
That's it right there. Yeah, you're always one's never happy with their own work.
Right. I know. I was like, I don't know if I should show Alex this. I wonder if he's going to be like, I don't like this image.
No, there's things that I look at that I'm like, oh my goodness, I really sucked back then. I don't know how they hired me.
No. And if, as I'm showing you some of these other covers, if there is something that you think of that you wish you would have done, please let me know.
Oh, sure. Oh, that's cool.
Just say it. All right, so cool. Let's go to the next one here. Yeah.
Okay. Sure.
So of course another, it's just like, usually, I'm always like, I'm not the biggest fan of like a background where there's not much going on. It's just the characters in the front popping. But like this one, it's like, because like obviously the focus and the action is on the chokehold, right? Like that's the focal point. And I really liked what you said about how you only try to render the focal point with the most detail, and then everything else kind of, as you back away from that focal point, you render less and less. And I think this is like a really great example. I just realized that, because like Batman looks very detailed, like just that section. And then as you back up, it becomes less and less.
Right.
Rendered. Can you talk about this image a little bit?
Sure. I think it's one of my favorite covers of Hush. For sure, it's top 3 of the whole run. And it's because it's an example of how using white as a color can really impact a cover. And I don't like using white on covers unless it's going to be something like this, where it's going to be very impactful. It's a design element. And for this, it was about helping guide the eye between the strong whites and then the spotted blacks that Jim and Scott had thrown down on there, and how those blacks guide your eye through Superman right to Batman's throat. And so I did my best to create that. So you see something that I rarely do, and it's rendering straight to white, even on a character like Superman, whose suit is so bright and saturated that whenever you take something like that to, say, like a white, it's going to really stand out. But in this case, you do it so that part of it disappears into that background, and so you're using that same kind of design element to guide that eye to Batman's face.
It's just, it's really great because this cover, even from far away, it pops, and then up close, it's a different experience. So I would agree. I think this is also one of my, probably if not my favorite cover from the Hush line. This is definitely, it's up there. So I'll show you this next one. So you,
these were so much fun to do.
yeah. I just discovered this cover recently, and it made me so happy that you also got to work on it again. And so can you talk about how what are some of the things that you did differently between the first time you did it and then, recently for this Flash cover?
So I think one of the main things that you see is that Flash is the main thing that's coming into this. And so one of the great things that Jim did is he took the cape and he flipped it so that the red element from that first cape is still there, but it's now Flash, right?
Yeah, did not even pick up on that.
Yeah, and so what was fun about it is that I still got to blow out all the colors, but the fun part was using pink for the flowers. And sticking one in his ear was a great touch by Jim. So I think it was fun to recreate it. I did go back and use some old brushes that I don't use anymore to give that same feel. So it was about really recreating it, but giving it its own kind of modern feel. And that's why the colors are a little bit more saturated. They're a little bit more, I don't know if you want to use the word happier, but you kind of want to go with the tongue-in-cheek approach of the drawing, and then make sure that the colors aren't too somber. And so the flesh tones are a little bit brighter. They're not as dark. There's not as many spotted blacks as before. And so, definitely playing up the fun aspect of this one, as opposed to the really dramatic and moody piece from the original.
Yeah. I didn't really realize the moods were so different, because you again, if you look at them separately, you think it's the same cover recreated, but with the Flash. But then when you look at them side by side, you realize, the one with Flash, it's like a lighter, funnier version. It's now it's like a parody, right? It's like a humorous scene instead of like something serious. So yeah, I really enjoyed putting these side by side, because you can really notice the difference in tone and color. So, but yeah, also one of my favorite Flash covers.
Yeah, it's hilarious.
But yeah, so also earlier I mentioned that, you tried to be aware of what colors you use for, like a run of covers, to make sure that they all popped if they were next to each other on a stand. And yeah, you basically answered my question on this, so I won't linger on this for too long, but it's just interesting to see, all of those covers next to each other and how different they are. Was there another, go ahead, sorry.
And what's cool about it is that this is where you bring another person into the mix, where the graphic designer is really picking up on what we're doing and adding their own little bit as far as the color choices for the logo and the text and all that stuff that help us get to that point. Particularly the cover with Harley in it, where we use really washed out tones, very sepia tones, and the logo reflects that too. So it doesn't take away from the art, but just kind of augments it or adds to it.
Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't really notice just how involved or how much of a difference, those final elements are, like like the trade dressing, right?
Correct.
And how it can either detract or add to the cover. So that's really interesting.
Yep. You were gonna ask a question, sorry.
No, that was it. Okay. So also, again, just another great spread. Like, do you approach like a larger image like this differently than you would like a cover that's just smaller in scale? Because obviously now you have an image that a reader or viewer has to digest all at once. Can you talk about sort of that process of when you are trying to color something this large?
Yeah, and I think when you have something that's busy like this, you definitely try to simplify the planes. So you have your foreground, middle ground, background, and so you try and simplify that or unify it a little bit more, so that the piece has that depth, but you're using that depth to create an easier kind of plane of what's happening, and so that the reader can kind of move into it. Almost like if they were in that three-dimensional space where your eye goes through it from foreground to background. And so you'll see how the gold light from the city affects only some of them, but not all of them, and that establishes where they belong in that space, and pulls them in or out enough so that your eye kind of goes to where it needs to be, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I've always admired just how important, the coloring adds to depth of an image. Because, when you're drawing and inking, you can't, it's difficult to show distance, like maybe the thickness of the line is thinner or something, but it's the color that really, makes it feel dimensional. So yeah, it's really interesting to hear you talk about that.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the successful inkers and colorists are also have to be very knowledgeable of the art as a whole, because we definitely need to help what's already been there, or make sure that we keep what's been established and help enhance it.
Yeah. So these are just some of the Batman images you've worked on, and just how you were talking about how you try to be cautious and aware, of using different colors to make the same character pop over and over again. Can you talk about maybe some challenges that you've had, especially with Batman, since you've colored him so many times, of other colors that you feel like is something that works with Batman besides, blacks, grays, and blues? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, these particular images, like, you try and find what the hook is that you're going to use to help change things up. And so the cover with Batman and Robin from All Star is Green Lantern was going to be in that issue, and so instead of spotlighting him with a yellow spotlight, hey, let's spotlight him with the green, and you're kind of hinting at the reader that it's Green Lantern, but you're not really showing your hand because the symbol's not on there.
It's good.
And we even played with dropping the symbol on there, and after showing it to Jim, he's like, it's too obvious. Just make it green. That should be enough for the people in the know to figure out, oh, Green Lantern's here, that kind of a thing. And then the red skies, I use red skies a lot because I fell in love with Batman the animated series, and that was the first time I saw a red sky used, and I'm like, oh my god, that's amazing. I'm like, it's red, it's gorgeous, and it works, and it pops, and it helps things. And so the animated series came out, and I think Hush came out shortly after, and I was like, I'm using red skies, and I'm saving them for a really, really cool moment in the story. And that was, I saved them until Hush was revealed as what eventually was Red Hood. But
that's right. Yeah.
And so the red, the whole red thing became the very dramatic part of it. And this one, I wanted to do the play on the cool versus warm, the red versus blue, from All Star Batman and Robin, and then from Hush, it's all about the mood. It's all about the Batman coming out of the shadows, and he kind of blends into the wall, but he pops out a little bit.
Yeah. I was trying to think. I think this is one of the first panels where you see Batman the full body.
It's It's
like
page 5 from the first issue.
Yeah. So yeah, very cool. So yeah, again, obviously the opposite end of Batman is like the Joker, right? In terms of just color. Can you talk about how you approach coloring the Joker, especially over and over again in different runs?
I think the one thing I keep consistent when I color the Joker is his eyes. I think nothing sells the crazy more than really like rubbed out, like psychotic eyes. And so if you see me coloring the Joker, his eyes are going to be red. Like they're going to be irritated red. And then I think recently they changed his eyes to green. And so that part of coloring the Joker has changed for me, but you'll always see they look irritated, like someone's, like he's been up all night trying to figure out how he's going to screw up Batman's world. And so the eyes are like irritated, just zonked out. And so that's the one thing you'll see consistent from me. And then I'll change little things here and there, but I just love the contrast of the white of his face versus the red on his lipstick and his eyes, and the green. And it's just so stark. So
Huh. I'll have to
Yeah,
go back and look at that. I didn't realize that the eyes were the constant. So yeah, I'll definitely go through that again. That's really cool.
yeah.
All right.
And his teeth and his eyes, if you notice, they start off with a yellow base instead of a blue base for the shading, and that's again just since his skin is white, I want to make sure that the eyes
Yeah.
again pop out. So there's yellow in there.
Right. Right. Yeah, that must be tricky because when you think Joker, you're like, okay, he's got white makeup on, and then his teeth is white. But then when you show that, with color, you
Yeah.
need it to be different. So yeah, that's. Are there other challenges like that where you have to make similar colors look different next to each other? I mean, I guess that's Batman all the time, right?
Batman all the time. I mean, it's hard. Like Superman, he's got the primary colors on his suit: blue, red, and yellow. And so, how do you make him blend in when you need him to blend in and not stand out? And so his palettes are hard to do,
Hmm.
right? So that if he wasn't the important part of that cover, how do I make him disappear? And
Yeah,
so
yeah,
those
yeah.
are some of
Oh,
those
right.
challenges. Yeah.
Let's see. Yeah, right, right. Huh.
Right. And so it becomes you wash him out, you wash him in that ambient light and make him be part of that background. So the blue in there for his suit is not the real blue that I used for him normally, but I definitely wash it with that turquoise light that's in the sky,
Yeah.
um, so that he blends in a little bit more. Especially, and then the reds look really dingy, tinged like that. And that's a little ode to the story part of it, where he was under Ivy's spell and not really Superman. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
you're kind of playing with that.
Yeah, because you want to show that, Superman is in Batman's world, right?
Right.
Not the other way around. You want him to fit into someone else's world. So yeah, that's a really um, like nice little touch to, make sure that readers are aware of where they are.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. So yeah, I just wanted to show some of the other characters that you've colored, just how different and how just how cool they look. So this is just here more for me.
Well,
um,
appreciate that.
yeah, just really cool. And so, like I said earlier, you had a chance to work with Frank Miller. Can you talk about how, when you color so I'm assuming you adjust the way you color depending on the story and everything. Do you have a
Mhm.
certain go-to for when you're working on Frank Miller stuff?
Well, Frank always says if Batman always has to be bloody. There's got to be blood on Batman at every point, even if he didn't just fight. There's a drop of blood that's left over from the last fight or something like that. And so
Mm.
he had just told me this when he gave me the art for this, and I'm like, I'm gonna go nuts. There's gonna be blood everywhere. And he's like, okay. And when I sent it to him, he actually laughed. He's like, yeah, that's it. You got it.
That's hilarious. Yeah, because it's a wraparound cover, and it's just
Yeah.
like 90% of this cover is just the splattering of blood. And
Yeah.
then it works. It's great. That's
And it's
pretty
fun to
funny.
work with Frank. He does leave a lot for the colors to jump in and play, and that's why I love working with him. His line work is very dynamic,
Hmm.
and graphic, and so you have to again walk that fine line between rendering and not rendering to maintain that graphic style, and help keep that fluidity that he has to his work.
That's cool. I mean, when I saw this, I was like, who did this? And I was like, oh, okay, that's cool. And it's
Uh,
always fun to discover when you're familiar with someone's work, and then you realize that you didn't know that you did something else. It's even more fun to realize like, oh, they can change up their style, um, and it's just really cool to find out, when it's you. You're like, oh wow, I didn't expect that.
yeah, and I really wanted to. I loved his work with Lynn Varley on 300 and Electro Lives Again, and I wanted to be very organic, and so I bought and I built a whole set of watercolor brushes, and that's all that I used over Frank on Dark Knight 3, and especially on Xerxes. I
Oh
really went
yes.
nuts with the watercolor feel.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, because I mean, otherwise, when else would you be able to do that? So it's always nice to kind of go crazy on one thing that you haven't really done too much of. Um,
Yeah.
and so, uh, the reason why I have this, you didn't work on these, but
Right.
I just wanted to explain a little bit some background. So I'm a huge fan of like DC Elseworlds, right? So
Mm-hmm.
you have Pirate Batman, you've got like Musketeer Batman, you've got like a Phantom of the Opera Batman. Is there like an Elseworlds Batman that you're a fan of?
Well, I love Batman by Gaslight. That story was so cool. I mean,
Yeah.
Mike Mignola and Mark Chiarello, especially on colors. Really cool story. And so I think Gaslight would probably be my top one. I'm trying to think what other Elseworlds Batmans there have been out there that I might like.
There's actually a lot. I didn't realize there were so many when I was just looking up images, and I was like, wow, there's like Samurai Batman and Steampunk Batman. There's like, oh, there's so many.
I do love the ones from the Lego movie. Like there's like a Kiss Batman and a Mariachi Batman, and so some of those are super cool.
That's right.
They just pushed it to like, oh yeah, they'll never do this. So Mariachi Batman.
Yep. They're like, okay, he's only going to be on screen for 2 seconds, so we can do this. That's funny. I forgot about those. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, some of us noticed and loved it. So
yeah, they're like, there's going to be some people who are going to enjoy this. And then this is just one of my favorite covers. This is one of the ones where I didn't know you did, and I was just like, at first I was like, no way, because there was an image where your signature wasn't on it, so I didn't know it was you.
Oh,
and then when I looked up the cover, I was like, oh my gosh, it's Alex. Like and it's so funny because this totally not even I would have not have expected it. So I just wanted to say I really enjoyed this cover.
Well, this one was fun because when I got the cover, that background didn't have anything on it, and I thought, I got to do the Looney Tunes tunnel.
Oh yeah,
the concentric circles and like the opera, whatever that is, and I was like, I gotta do that. And so when I sent that in, the editor was especially tickled by the fact that I threw my little ode to me watching Looney Tunes when I was a kid. Well, yeah, endlessly.
That's the one where the character pops out. Like, of course, like
yeah,
that's interesting. I would have assumed that was already drawn in the background before it got to you, but. Huh.
No. There was no background in there, and so I just like I'm dropping my 2 cents in here.
Yeah. What would you have done if they said no?
I probably would have tried to argue my way into it somehow.
You're like, there is no plan B. It's just this.
Yeah. I hope you like it because it's not changing.
Yeah, no, that's great. I did not even think that. That's great that as a colorist you can make creative decisions like that, and especially once it's come to you, you kind of have like one of the last you're one of the last touches on something on the piece. So yeah, that's really cool. And then you mentioned that you really like animals. What's the story with this frog?
So when I was in middle school and high school, my brother had started to draw a frog, a red-eyed tree frog, and then I kind of took it and morphed it. And it was how I would like draw, like would sign cards, happy birthday, and I would draw this frog and sign it, and it became my signature. And then I did some work for the San Diego Zoo. I used to teach art classes there for their summer camps.
Oh wow!
And then they have an outreach program where they take the animal ambassadors to different schools to teach kids about conservation and eco awareness and all that stuff. So they started to commission me to paint their backdrops for these presentations, and one of them was how green can you go? And she's like, what would you do? And I said, frogs. I'm like, we can do red-eyed tree frogs. They're green, and we'll put them in a green background. And so this is actually 1/3 of the piece. It's a very vertical piece where there's 3 frogs on them. And so this is the top frog on the 3-tier. And when it's weird how I use this frog as an avatar, and it's now become like how I identify myself on everything. And so frogs have always been one of my favorite animals to draw, to paint. and definitely the red-eyed tree frogs are at my top of my list. So much so that my daughters, one Christmas, wanted to get me some real ones.
Oh wow,
And, and
I'm so, yeah,
my wife,
right.
yeah, my wife put the kibosh on it, and I don't think I'll ever forgive her for that.
Oh man, I can't imagine. You know, they're tiny, right? They're small, right? Or,
Yeah, they
yeah.
can't get any bigger than this, and
Right.
I'm sure they're a pain in the butt to keep track of because you gotta maintain certain humidity levels
Sure. Yeah, because they're tropical.
all that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but
Cool, yeah.
it's yeah. So this is a piece that I did for the zoo, and I've kind of adopted as my icon.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I always wondered because I see it everywhere, and I was like, "There's got to be what's up with these frogs, man? I got to find out." Cool. That's very awesome. Okay, well, yeah, that's the end of that slideshow. I'm just gonna
Cool.
Stop sharing my screen here, and I just have a couple more questions, and then we'll wrap up. Does that
Of
sound
course.
good? Yeah, cool.
Yeah, totally.
You're doing okay on time?
Yeah, we're good. We're good.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
So I did mention earlier that I noticed that you have a really cool workspace. You got the Captain America bust. I learned today that was one of your favorite characters. Very awesome. What is the coolest thing in your office that you look to and you just kind of get inspired?
Oh man. Actually, if I could show it, there's a ton of stuff in here. So imagine 20, 30 years worth of collecting stuff. So people ask me, which one's one of your favorite pieces? My first piece was, first statue I owned was the Dark Knight 3 statue by Frank Miller, where he's kneeling and he's got Carrie Robin with the slingshot.
That's cool.
It's like an ode to the end of that first series. And so when that came out, I bought it, and it's followed me everywhere. And so that's one of the main pieces that I love. But over the years, I've collected, I have stuff based on artwork that I worked on with Jim and Scott, or that I worked on with other artists. And so I tend to buy depending on that. Batman's very, very well represented in my collection. But I do have other pieces that I really like. I mean, Sideshow created some great, like, Wonder Woman and Superman statues, and so I own those. And then other companies as well. And so it's funny how it's like your kids, right? You love them all, and is there one of them really your favorite? It depends on the day.
Yep.
Depends if they listened to you last night.
That's funny.
If they did the dishes.
Yeah, but that's true. Yeah, it totally depends on the mood. Like you'll want one thing one day, and the other you'll want something else, or you'll look to something as like, oh, that's really cool. That's why I like it. Do you mind showing us just a little bit?
Sure.
Whatever you want to show us. Is that cool?
So this is my office, and so here we go. All right, so this is kind of what I see from my desk, and so the TV's there. That's my collection of this 1/6 scale figures.
I don't think you have enough Batman.
Yeah, so my printer's over here, and then I have some black and whites.
Wow, that's cool.
And then behind me, you saw some of it, and so there's a Harley Quinn section. I'm a Lord of the Rings fan.
Yep.
Some Batman family, some busts.
Very cool.
The Justice League based on the artwork that James Scott and I did for the series, and then the lanterns from Blackest Night, which I got to work on with Jeff, Ivan, and Eau Claire. So Mighty Mouse I've had for a long time. A couple of awards that I've received, that I'm proud of, that I'm happy to display. Let's see if we can go. So that's where the Trinity is.
Oh, of course.
So those are the Sideshow Trinity.
Yeah.
So you got your Justice League.
Yep.
Star Wars. Your Avengers.
Man. That's incredible.
So, Harley Quinn's been huge in my career. Whoops. All right, and then
looks great.
So then there's the Dark Knight piece that I'm talking about.
Yeah, that was your first one, right?
Yeah, and then Hush, of course.
Yeah, of course. You got to have the stance.
So these shelves are basically the books and series that I've worked on over my career.
Wow.
And then a couple more pieces. kind of there, and then the big pieces.
Oh man.
The Hush.
Yeah.
The Ivan Rice
Awesome.
Batman. So,
That's
kind of
is that a custom desk, custom table? It's got to be, right?
Actually, it isn't. It was from a company that I bought ages ago. So it was a customizable desk, and so that I kind of bought it and customized it to what I felt was going to work best for my purposes, and it's stuck with me.
Yeah.
I think I did tell my wife that she might have to bury me with it.
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing. Oh, yeah, you're right. Yeah, I saw the Colossus holding up the Sentinel. Very awesome.
Yep.
Wow. Yeah, that was.
So a little bit of everything over the years. There's some Legos. There's some paint and brushes and stuff like that. And again, just little things that as my career has gone through, they mean different things as I kind of move through the years.
Yeah, that's really incredible. I really appreciate you showing me that. That was way better. I mean, you've posted some photos of your office on social media, but like, yeah, it's always even better to see it in context, right? Because when you see in a photo, it's hard to gauge, how big it is and how much space it takes up. But no, yeah, your office is definitely definitely a bat cave for sure.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I know, it's always like you don't want to post too many pics. Like I'm not bragging. People always ask me, what does it look like? So
yeah. Well, I mean, you can tell, right? You can tell even from the couple of images. Like, okay, it's got to be more. It's not just But no, that was great. Thank you for sharing.
Sure.
So just last couple questions, and then we can wrap this up. Are you excited for the DC Fandom this weekend?
I am.
Yeah.
I have to tell you, I love the first one. I thought, I'll tune in, see what it's like, and then 8 hours later, I'm like, holy smokes, that was so cool, and I can't believe I was online for 8 hours straight.
Yeah. Well, I always say like, I'm just gonna tune in and catch some of the panels that they highlight, but then it's like you start it and you're just like, okay, I'm gonna hang around, because they had something for every, like, the whole time, every minute there was something.
Yeah.
It was almost
it was super
almost
cool.
much.
It was like being in a convention, right? You just kind of went from one panel to the next, or from one thing to the other. So they did a great job of recreating that feeling, and it was cool for someone who goes to conventions and doesn't get to do that anymore, to be able to sit from home and experience it like that. Especially someone, I kind of knew some of the things that were coming up, and I got to work on some of the stuff that was revealed and shown. It was very cool that I'm excited to see now more of what they're going to show, the announcements about the animated side of things and the comic book side of things. And so I have a couple projects that I'm working on that I'm hoping they'll announce. I don't know if they're going to, so I'm kind of going to keep my ear open for that. Like, okay, well, can we talk about that yet? Can we talk about that yet?
So you will have a bigger presence then on this Explore the Multiverse, right? Because it's more focused on
right.
Comics.
So like I said, I'm not sure what they're going to show.
Yeah. Great answer.
Yeah. No, that's the truth. I have no clue what they're showing.
Oh yeah, they're like, we're not telling you anything. No, that's good, because they want you to. And I like what you said about how they did a really good job about making it feel like a convention experience. Because for most people who go to like San Diego Comic-Con, normally the content that they showed for the DC Fandom would be in Hall H, and only a certain number of people would see that.
Right.
For a week, like, and then that's it. Like, if you're in Hall H, you're okay, but otherwise you don't get to see it. So it's nice that this is something that everyone got to see at the same time.
Yeah,
so.
No, I agree 100%. I've never been to a Hall H anything, so that was kind of like, well, that's actually kind of cool. So
really, not even as an attendee, like.
Nope, I never did any of that stuff. I have gone to panels before as an attendee, obviously as a panelist, but I never did any of the big Hollywood reveals or anything like that. I was always at my artist alley table, grinding out the weekend.
Got it. So you were at San Diego at the convention, but you weren't in Hall H because you were busy.
I was working.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. All right. Last question. Who is one
Sure.
of the most famous people you've met? Period. Like
Period.
recently. Or yeah, let's do ever.
Ever.
Yeah.
I mean, you meet. It's humbling when you meet someone and you're a fan of them and they reciprocate that fandom, and so they're like, oh, I'm a fan of your work, and like, oh, I love your work. So it's cool to see how folks who you look up to and whose work you admire kind of do the same thing with your own. And I was lucky to meet Henry Cavill after the premiere of Justice League. Amazing guy, incredible guy. I think he was born to play Superman, and if anyone ever plays Superman again, forget it. Don't do it, because he's the guy, right? And he's been so amazing in the movies that he's been in as Superman, that I hope they release more movies with him as that character. So he was a great person to meet. There's folks like Chris Daughtry, who's an extremely talented musician, really huge comic book fan, and through that kind of mutual love for each other's work, we've become pretty good friends. You know, we chat here and there, but I've gotten to color over his drawings, and some of them have actually been published as well, and so it's been fun to explore a relationship like that, where you admire their work and you realize that they love your work as well, and it kind of blossoms into a friendship and a collaboration down the line kind of a thing too. So he was great. I mean, we met. I'm trying to think. I'm sure I'm forgetting somebody, and I'm sure like I met the guy who played Wedge in Star Wars at a convention. And so
I know you're talking about.
You know, it's cool to meet someone like that who maybe is not super famous, but as a kid growing up watching Star Wars, you're like, oh my god.
Yeah. Right. And they're like, yeah, that's me.
So
that's funny.
You know, it's cool that the medium for me has allowed me to travel and go travel abroad and especially meet people like this who I watched whether I was a kid or currently watch on TV or in a movie, and it's kind of cool that they enjoy and love the medium too, because they realize that their work is kind of anchored in it as well.
That's cool to you know, when you meet someone that you looked up to, and then now you guys are like peers or coworkers or friends, so that's pretty amazing. You know, when they say like, don't meet your heroes, like, you should, because they're
I think
cool.
so. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've gotten to meet so many of my comic book heroes, and it's been amazing. You know, and even more so that I've gotten to work with them. That's huge.
Yeah. Wow. Alex, that's all I have. Where can people follow your work if they want to look more into it?
I'm on Twitter and I'm on Instagram. My handle is the same on both. It's Sync Color, 2 C's in the middle, so it's the first 4 letters of my last name, SINCCOLOR. And I post a lot, mostly on Instagram. Every now and then I vent about soccer or football on Twitter.
That's the place for it.
But I do tend to promote my work on both and post not only comic book work, but some of my own work and photos of Bruce, our dog.
Yes.
And so, if you want to give a follow, feel free to drop a comment. I try and reply to as many as I can. But that's where you can follow me.
All right. Sounds good, man. Thank you so much. I super honored and just really appreciative of you taking the time to speak with me today, just about your career and everything. So yeah, I really appreciate it.
No, thank you. Thanks for having me, and I hope you had as much fun as I did. This was great.
Yeah, I had a blast. But trying to keep it cool, So, but yeah, no. Thank you so much, and I will definitely let you know when this is ready to go. Just give you a heads up, and that way you can go it from now. Yep. Cool. Okay, that's it. Thank you so much. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, take care, man. Have a good one.
Bye. Bye.